All right, hey everybody, it's Thursday night, 7:30, and it's Greg here with Coach Dustin, Coach Brad, and welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. And now, technically for us, as we're recording this is the beginning of our second season, episode number 48 tonight. This is the second season of the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. So I want to thank everybody that maybe is just joining us for the first time, or those of you that have been listening and following along over the past year. We're just super excited to be back. We got a lot of great topics, a lot of new interesting things that are going to come up on our podcast for this season plan. So let's kick into it for tonight. Tonight, I'm going to cut to the intro. Before I do, we are going to talk problems, not solutions. A very important part of weaponizing, not just weaponizing, but this you can apply this to every aspect of your life. But we're going to talk problems, not solutions. Hang with us, back in 30 seconds. Body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, we're back. Okay, problems, not solutions. First visceral take on it, guys. What do you get out of that title?
The thing that hit me first was the same as the saying, like square peg round hole, in the sense that I think one of the major problems with a lot of people who profess to teach self-defense and stuff is they're all about, they focus so much on the solution, and they're like, here, let me give you my solution, and then maybe they attempt, or they leave it up to the individual to attempt to then apply that solution to various problems, whether it's correct or incorrect. So they kind of have it backwards.
Perfect. Okay. Brad?
Yeah, for me is the cart before the horse.
Okay.
It's the first thing that kind of popped in my head. And like a lot of what Dustin's saying is kind of ran through my head too. And it's like, well, you're gonna try to put me into a solution. You know, you're gonna try and say, well, this is a solution, blah 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 blah, without understanding what I'm actually dealing with, or what, and that could be anything. It's like, well, how do we, if we don't fully understand the problem, then how can we seek an adequate solution to that problem if we don't have that intel?
Perfect. Okay. Obviously, I mean, I completely agree with both your guys' synopsis of it. And, I'll throw my 2 cents in and just maybe try to clarify for people. But I'm really just going to reiterate what you guys have already said. But again, we've talked about this before. And one of the analogies that I like is you've got to have something at stake. You know what I mean? Like when we talk about stress, for example, like high stress. Most people, well, I don't know if people fully know this or not, but in order for you to experience high, tremendous levels of stress, right? And stress is the big thing, because fear, as human beings, we don't typically live in fear, not for prolonged periods of time. Like, yes, we can experience fear, but when you are genuinely experiencing fear, that demands all your focus. And so one way or the other, good or bad, whatever the result is, the fear tends to manifest. Like something happens. Okay, like you open your door and you see fucking hot lava coming towards your house. You're gonna experience fear, but in a matter of a few minutes, that lava is either gonna burn your house to the fucking ground, or it's gonna miss your house, and then the fear will pass. But what happens is the human mind, when it fears something, it doesn't, it's anticipation, and so that fear kind of manifests in anxiety and stress, and that's where people tend to live for long periods of time. So how this connects to, like, on my front, from thinking about the problem versus the solution, is how do you solve something? Like, how do I, like, I'll just, again, you got lava come, like, what's the fucking problem? How do you ever create a solution if you don't first actually understand the problem? And this might seem like common sense, but it's anything but common sense, right? The thing we know about common sense is it's not all that fucking common. So in the world of self-defense, what you have is you have a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals that are teaching solutions. And it's like, so a martial artist system is a solution, and that solution is packaged, it's boxed up, it's cataloged, it's put into a procedure, and then it is marketed and sold to the student. So the student is learning a solution. They're learning an art. Now, I'm not saying that they don't ever address a problem, or that their solution doesn't fix a certain problem. It clearly does, but it's like almost like you think of it like it's a universal problem, but that's not true. Does that make sense? Like I don't like. It's like they'll look at it and say, here, like all of self-defense is predicated off of fighting. Like you got to learn how to fight. That's what it is. Self-defense is about learning to defend yourself, which equates to learning to fight. Those become synonyms. Brad, you want to throw in on that?
Yeah, it just really sparked like a thought in my head, because everybody that said, "Oh, I'm looking to defend myself," and everything, we do that.
Yes.
We do that. We're Muay Thai, we're Taekwondo, we're karate, whatever it happens, Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, oh, I want to like learn how to defend myself. We do that. Okay, so they think that they have the solution to the problem because it might look alike.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you can use a screwdriver to bang in a nail. Like you can do it. It's super fucking inefficient, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you can't flip the screwdriver over and start hammering on the fucking nail. Now, if it's a little finishing nail, you're probably going to be a little bit more successful. If it's if it's a long fucking framing nail, depending how big that screwdriver is, it's going to be fairly ineffective. Okay, so again, like solutions are only effective to the degree to which they are specific to the problem, to the task, to the challenge, whatever term you want to put with it, right? And so one of the hardest things that I experience is there's social conditioning. There's the socially accepted paradigm of what self-defense is. And so everybody comes in from a starting position of, I already know the problem, so we don't have to discuss this. If I get attacked or my family gets attacked or whatever it is, I have to learn how to fight. And that's, I was going to say that's a generalized statement, but it's not really that generalized. It's a popularized statement. It's a very universal statement, and it's very specific to how people actually think. And that paradigm is very destructive. It's challenging, because the second that somebody comes in and we're trying to we're weaponizing, meaning it's the physical and mental process for mastering the tool of violence. And to prepare for violence, you have to study criminality, not combative sport, and not the art of fighting. You have to take those out of the equation. It's not that there's not some useful things in there, but they are not specific to the problem that of criminality. And so that's where the first thing has to start. And that's the first thing we do with everybody, is we start them by saying, listen, the degree to which you can ever own the solution, right? So how good you can get at the solution is absolutely dependent on the degree to which you own the problem. And notice I said own the problem, not just understand the problem. Intellectually understanding the problem has almost nothing to do with owning the problem. And maybe if you guys, if that kicks something up in you guys, maybe speak on that part of it, because I think we really need to clarify that for people.
I think that just goes back to the podcast we did on belief. Mm-hmm. Like in our first season, we talked about people will only do what they believe will actually work and what they believe they can actually do. And I think that's a huge part of actually going from understanding a problem to actually owning the problem. You have to believe that it can happen to you. You have to believe that is in fact the problem that you face. Until you have that, how can you possibly own it?
Yeah, 100%. Do you want to throw anything on that, Brad?
Just really quick, is that it's just really echoing what Dustin's saying, really. I could understand the problem and be like, well, I understand that that's a problem. That's your problem. I don't have that problem because I'm this, that, or the next thing. So it's like, yeah, I get it, but like you have that problem because you're a pussy, or you have that because of whatever. I don't have that problem because I'm 6'8", 350 pounds. Yeah. Right. So it's like that he doesn't own that problem. He may understand it, but he's like, it's not my problem. It's your problem. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually what you just said is the perfect segue. I'm not going to quite jump there yet, but we are. And that's going to be into that denial. because there's and I knew that this would be. I wanted to integrate denial into tonight's conversation, and I thought this was a great way to do it because what Brad's talking about again is like we all, okay, let's understand versus own. Understand is an intellectual exercise. I understand something, but you can understand something inside and out, top to bottom, front to back, and yet believe that it has almost zero, if not zero, bearing on your life or impact on your life. You say, I understand it, but that doesn't concern me. And so therefore, you're never going to investigate the solution, right? And even if you do investigate the solution or someone's trying to teach you the solution, you won't retain any of it, or you'll do it in a entertainment, education level only. And when it comes to violence, and it comes to something like violence and life and death, education level of understanding or entertainment value of understanding is never going to save your life. Okay, so owning the problem, one of the things I do is you go one step deeper. When we explain the problems to people, when we start educating people on criminality, teaching them bad guy blueprints, saying this is what they do, like study them, watch tape on them. We're showing them tape of the types of attacks that they do. The blitz, the posturing predators, the persuasion predators, the posturing pack, all of this stuff. When we're getting them to study and we're showing them real world violent assaults. And we're not just showing it to them, but we're breaking it down and getting them to understand their blueprint. What was the motivation? Why did they do these things? When you do that properly, and when you've had enough time, when you can saturate people into that world, they go from, what I think owning the problem, where that conversion happens, is when they feel like it's not something that could happen. They start feeling like it's something that has happened. Like they start feeling like they've watched so much of it and they're so connected to it on a deep level because they're studying it and understanding it. They are identifying with the victims. Do you get what I mean? Like they're seeing themselves, they're putting themselves into that situation and saying, look what these guys did. Look how they got this person. Like, you sit there and you watch a video of a murder of violent predatory criminals. They break into home invasion and they stab the homeowners, and you're watching this unfold, and you are feeling it. You're watching what they did because you're going, how did they maximize damage? How did they get these people? Like what did the bad guys do to make that easier for themselves? How did they make it harder for the homeowner to defend himself? Did they separate, the husband from the wife and from the children? Did they, have 3 guys on him with guns and force him to the ground? Did they use his wife as a hostage and leverage? Like, what did they do? And as you start studying that, you can't help because you're studying how this happened. You are putting yourself in that situation and saying, what could I do? What could I do to counter their objective? What could I do to destroy the objective? What could I do before this ever happened to prevent them from even getting into the house? Like, what can I do? And so you start when you go deep into the study of criminality and you go deep into the bad guy breakdown, the blueprint, the breakdown, the study of this, you start to take on this feeling like you've been there, like I've experienced this shit, like it becomes very real to you. And that is the level of ownership that I prescribe to people, right? Because when you have experienced that, it leads us to a very powerful piece of self-talk that is connected to our beliefs, which creates emotional state, which is never again. And you literally think, fucking never again. Like you sit there and go, I'm blessed. I had this experience and now I have the time to train, to fucking prepare, to grow, and it's like never again. Never again, not the same fucking way. They're never going to get me on the blind side like that again. They're never going to find me with my door unlocked. They're never going to find me without, a weapon or a tool within reach of whether I'm sleeping or fucking washing dishes or answering the door. They're never, all of that type of stuff. It changes the game. And so this owning the problem has to transform into, that never again aspect where you go, I have experienced this and never again. And I mean, this is the state we get people to. And of course, the beautiful part of this is you get people to that level minus the trauma. right? Minus the trauma of actually having, lived through that and suffered the damage. That's how the trauma is avoided. Because they're sitting there going, listen, I've seen this, I identify with this, I've put myself in it. The body knows what the mind tells it, and it becomes very real in the mind. But then the reframe is that you are weaponizing, you're taking action, you have time, you're preparing, you are like, you work to the place of certainty. And so the trauma isn't there. Right? And so you just build this resiliency. Okay? So that's that most important part is you got to get people to own the problem, and there has to be a process for how they do that. Once they own the problem, then you talk, and only then can you ever talk the solutions. So before we jump to the solutions, let's talk about the denial piece, and let's talk about what are the barriers that we have to overcome. Because I see this was in me, this was in each of you, this is in everybody that comes. Now, we all have denial to different levels. It takes different lengths of time to break these things down. But let's talk about denial, because first off, how does somebody know they're in denial?
Well, they're usually denying that they're in denial. So they don't really know until somebody tells them they're in denial.
Okay, well, and even that, even if somebody tells them, that can be good, but how does somebody that is in denial and might even be in denial that they're in denial, how do they begin to figure out if they're in denial? What do you need to know? Let me break it down this way, right? You're driving in your car. How do you know you need to pull over? How do you know you need to take it to the garage? How do you know that you need to check that everything's okay in your car?
You have something,
A warning light or...
Okay.
you have an indicator,
Okay, so there's two schools of thought. One is that a warning light comes on. Computers or cars nowadays have these great, amazing computers, and they have sensors, and a warning light comes on. So check engine, low tire pressure, battery, whatever it is. The other way that I think Brad was kind of going to at first is you experience something. You feel something. You're like, what the fuck is that? I must have a flat tire. What's that?
I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
Something happens, you're like, oh, that kind of caught me off guard. Like,
yeah, like your brakes could squeak. Your front tire can be wobbly. Like you can get vibrations in the steering wheel. I mean, like you're either going to feel something and experience something, or you're going to have some sort of a sensor or warning light. So listen, in life, how people figure out that they're in denial is something fucking happens to them. That's one way. You know the thing about denial, right? It's the gift that'll kill you twice. Because denial can kill you because you're unprepared for something that you ought to have been prepared for. And so it physically, up and bitch slaps you and kills you, injures you, destroys something about you. So something fucking happens and you go, what the fuck? And then people around you go, what do you mean, what the fuck? You know what I mean? How did you not know? You're living on the side of an active volcano and you didn't have a fucking plan for when the thing erupts. Like, you know what I mean? Like you had hurt, you should have fucking known, man. You live in Tornado Alley and you didn't do anything to prepare for that? So denial can kill you that way. And the second way that denial can kill you is that you repress everything. And so the denial of trauma, of emotional distress, of whatever's happening to you, you continue to deny that, and that toxic, septic experience that's happening to you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually rots you from the fucking inside out. So it'll kill you in two different ways. So that's the experience. That's the first part of denial. So how do you figure out that you're in denial? Is you're going to get fucking caught on the blind side. Life's going to kick you in the fucking balls. Okay, that's one way. The second way, and that's like driving in the car and you experience something. Your front tire fucking flies off, and you're driving down the road skidding on your rotors. You're experiencing that. The second way is a early indicator warning light goes off in your car that says check engine, low tire pressure, battery. And so you have the time, you pull over and you inspect your vehicle. And when it's safe and you're able to do so, you get it to a mechanic and you get the thing fixed, or you fix yourself, whatever you want to do. Now, what is that way? somebody that is in denial that goes, I don't know if I'm in fucking denial or not. I don't think I'm in denial. Matter of fact, fuck you for telling me I am denial. Fuck you for thinking I am in denial, you son of a bitch. Okay, well, here, let me share this with you. There are five indicators that you can use that can be a warning light to you to test whether or not you're in denial. So I'm going to give you the dashboard warning light that you can use to check to see if you're in denial. Because here's the thing, control can only ever follow awareness. So how do I become aware of something I'm not aware of? Well, you find out what the signals are and you fucking check. How do you find out if your car's low on oil? Well, you check. You pull the fucking dipstick out and you check. So very, very simple. Don't let denial kill you. Let's do the check. So what are the 5 signs or indicators of denial?
Rationalization.
So number 1, rationalization,
Justification.
minimization,
Excuse making.
and finally the 5th and probably most powerful,
Flat out refusal.
flat out refusal to accept it. Okay, so rationalization, justification, minimization, excuse making, and flat out fucking refusal to see shit for what it actually is. That is the behavior patterns. That is the thought process. That is the belief systems that people will use to insulate themselves from fucking seeing it for what it is. Okay? So when it comes to violence and it comes to say, well, owning the problem, I got to own the fucking problem. Well, people will rationalize why they don't have to own the problem. And so what does that look like? Can you guys think of an example of rationalization, how somebody rationalizes?
Oh, the odds. How many people out there are just playing the odds? Oh, that'll never happen to me. That won't happen here. How many times have you heard of that actually happening in your city? All those types of rationalizations. Because, yeah, you're right. 99% of the population doesn't get violently assaulted on a day-to-day basis. At least not in our society.
Yep. Okay, rationalization, the odds. What are the fucking odds? I'm 40-something years old, and I've never been violently assaulted. What are the fucking odds of that happen? So they're rationalizing. Okay, anyone, can you come up with another one?
I was already thinking about justification.
Well, okay, I'll throw one out there. Here's how people rationalize. I don't have to fucking worry about it. I just call the fucking cops.
Sure.
Somebody fucks with me or my family, I just call the fucking cops. They're just rationalizing that somebody else will come fucking home. I don't have to do that shit. That's why we have fucking police. Another rationalization, somebody says, I'm not worried about that. Why do you think I bought fucking guns, motherfucker?
Yeah. I was just going to say the gun thing.
Yeah. Somebody fucks with me, I got guns. I'll shoot somebody. Oh, so you're a murderer. Anyways, you know what I mean? That's a rationalization. Okay? Rationalization. You said it earlier. Look at me, I'm in great shape. I fucking lift the weights. I can bench press almost 500 fucking pounds. Who's going to fuck with me?
It also kind of leads into justification, like a lot of those ones too. Like I get from that angle, like, oh, I justify why I don't need to because I'm this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go into justification, because how is justification different than rationalization?
Well, it's trying to think about how to say it.
Because when you rationalize something, right, you're rationalizing it away.
Yes.
Okay? When you justify, you're doing something that's slightly different than rationalization. Now, can you justify a rationalization? Yes, that's exactly what Brad was talking about. Yeah. But if I have the rationalization that I fucking have guns, that's why I bought guns. I'm rationalizing that I have a way to defend myself, and that way is a firearm. Because in my mind, a firearm is the ultimate. I don't need to be 6'8" and 350 pounds and a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I put a bullet in the fucking gun, aim it, pull the trigger, and you're a fucking splat on the wall. Fuck you. Like that's a rationalization. But how do we justify that?
So justification is kind of the reason why, right? Like if you take like your rationalization, you're justifying your actions on not to. So it's like, yeah, I get that that's a problem, but I'm too busy to do that. I'm too busy, or that's not my responsibility. That's the police responsibility. So it kind of leads into that why, right?
Yes.
Why you don't do it, because you're putting the onus on something else or somebody else.
Yep. 100%. You can turn around and sit there and you know, you like you say that, well, that's the police's job. Like if I did that, then I may as well go be a fucking cop. That's like, let them do their fucking jobs. You know, I don't have to worry about that shit. That's why I'm not a fucking cop. I don't worry about that stuff. Like you're justifying that. It's like, well, that's somebody else's job. That's somebody else's fucking problem. They have to deal with that bullshit, right? Not me. Like again, even the fact of like I rationalize that. Well, if you fuck with me, I got guns. Fuck you. That's my rationalization. Why I don't have to worry about fucking training. I got a gun. Now, how do you justify owning the gun? Well, I own the gun because I'm not like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not a big guy. I'm not 6'8", and I'm not a fucking black belt in jiu-jitsu. So you justify that, like, I need to use that firearm, and that's why I have it. So that part starts to make sense in your fucking head, right? And you start to justify I would sue somebody. Like that person, you know, if that guy fucks with me, then he's going to jail. He's the one that's going to fuck up his entire life. Like, so you're justifying that, well, if he did that to me, he's going to pay a price for all this stuff. So there's a rationalization in there, but there's also a justification. It's like, I'm not going to fuck up my life. So you start justifying, well, you can't defend yourself here in Canada. It's so interesting. Anyways, I don't want to get into this whole side of it with the gun stuff, but it's very interesting, the rationalization that I'd use my gun, and then the justification of like, well, I can't carry my gun and all, you know what I mean? Like we're pushing back against the laws. You can see there's a conflict in that. But ideally, it's rationalization, justification, and then some people, they minimize. So what are some examples of minimizing? And we kind of already hit a couple because they tied into the rationalization. But
making it like not that big of a deal. Like I think you said it, Dustin, where you're like, well, what are the chances?
Yep.
That'd be minimizing.
That's minimizing.
It's like, okay,
100%.
so like there's violent assaults that happen multiple times a day, every day in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, well, so it's a problem. But it's not a problem for me because like, what are the chances? And I also live in a nice neighborhood, so it's not happening in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Touch on it.
The rationalization would in that combo would be like I'm you know, if it was me, I'm 51 years old, and when have I ever been violently assaulted? Like that's a rationalization. The minimization is, again, where they continue to say, well, what are the odds? Like you say, I live in a fucking good neighborhood. I don't live in the fucking slum. I don't drive down to the fucking inner city. Like, what are the odds? And you minimize it. And even if they did, what's it going to be? In my neighborhood, what is it going to be? Some 13-year-old kid, you know, trying to break into my, like, what's going to really happen? You get some punk kids in my neighborhood. That's a minimization.
That's what I was going to go on to, is minimizing the actual level of violence. I think that would be pretty common where, like you just said, there's, oh yeah, it's a 13-year-old, like whatever. Mm-hmm. Or, oh, I boxed in high school 20 years ago. I did this, because they're minimizing what that threat level is actually going to be. And so they just assume that they have the skill sets to deal with it.
He's just some dude that's pissed off, and comes at me like that, I'll just put him in his place.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's another one too that we come across quite often. And it's already kind of tied into what you said, but what's the end result? So I get a fat lip. What do we get? I get a couple black eyes. Like, yeah, you know, that sucks. I don't want that. But at the end of the day, we're getting a fight, like getting a tussle. Maybe you got a ripped shirt, fat lip, scraped up knuckles. Who gives a shit? Chicks dig scars. That's a minimization. Chicks dig scars. What do I care? Right?
I think too the people will be like, oh, I'll just talk my way out of it. Again, minimizing the actual level of threat that they face. Like, yeah, that person may not be too interested in talking.
Okay. See, here's where I'll submit to that. So we have rationalization, justification, minimization, making excuses. Now, with the whole thing, I just talk my fucking way out of it. There's minimization in that 100%. And then that also starts to flip us into excuse making.
Yeah. For sure. And that probably applies more to excuse making. I mean, a lot of these bleed into each other.
Of course.
You're 100%.
Context determines content, depending on the tone of which somebody says something.
Yeah, exactly. And how they're trying to use it. But yeah, I agree 100% that the verbal de-escalation tactics are for sure going to be heavily in excuse making, for sure.
Yeah. And if we're just rattling off a couple of them, right, like, hey, I'm not worried about the shit. I just talk my way out of it. You know, I could sell fucking cats to mice. I know how to mind my own business, right? Like I mind my own business. I don't fuck with people. I just mind my own fucking business. That's another, just like, I don't need to train because I just mind my own business. Like the only people, I'm not going around mouthing off to people. I'm not, flipping people off in the car. Sorry, what's that, Dustin?
Which is, how about I just black out. I just go crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of coming on the flip side of somebody being like, I don't want to train because, I fucking go nuts. They fuck with me, I'll lose my shit. Absolutely excuse making.
I don't need any training.
Yeah.
So I just go crazy.
Yeah. Well, if you look at that, that's rationalization in that. That's justification in that. That's minimization in that. That's excuse making in that. That has a little bit, again, depending on the tone and the context it's said, that has a little bit of everything in that, right? And let's just sort of last it on there. But flat out refusal, just flat out refusal to accept any aspect of it.
Oh, what do you train for? Like that never happens. What world are you living in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's so funny, and this is just a side little anecdote, but every person that's ever said that to me, where it's like, what do you train for? Like, this shit never fucking happens. Like, I'm, again, so many years old, it's never happened to me, blah, 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 all that type of shit. If I'm patient and I don't say anything, within 5 minutes, every single one of them begins to lay out story after story after story of family members and friends and all these people that have been violently assaulted, physically, mentally, emotionally. And it always, always ends with a story of how they got into a situation where either they were almost violently assaulted or in fact they fucking were. And it's like they fucking forgot about it because their brain goes into denial. But without fail, every single time. Because, I mean, people think 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. You know what I mean? People think like, I don't know anybody that's ever happened to. Interesting. 4 out of 5 women are sexually assaulted. How many women do you know? None? Like, you know what I mean? 4 out of fucking 5. Like, how many men, like the numbers are high. Like, everybody knows somebody. And typically someone within 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation that has experienced violence, aggression, interpersonal human aggression. Let's just put it at that, right? And so the second, but it's like the reticular activator in their brain is not set to recognize that or become aware of it, so they sensory gate those stories. But the second that the conversation turns that way, I've never experienced this. All the denial, all the shit, rationalization, all this shit comes out, and then within a few minutes, the brain starts pulling forward examples and show, well, what about now? Remember? And they start telling it like they didn't just sit there tell me that this never happens. They start just literally listing off story after story after story. Oftentimes, it's layered. I'm thinking of one person in particular where he said that and then told me all these stories for like fucking 2 hours. He just kept telling me stories, and at the end of it, he's like, yeah, but I'm a pretty big guy, so nobody'd ever fuck with me. And then 2 minutes later, these 2 guys one time, this guy fucking hit me from behind with this thing and knocked me on my knees. And I mean, they could have killed me at that point. And it's like, you don't even, like, you just fucking told me you're such a big guy, nobody fuck with you. And literally 2 minutes later, you just told me these people fucked with you and could have killed you. It's like, well, that's denial. Control follows awareness. So as overt as this shit can be right in front of you, we can have unintentional blindness. We can be blind to it. We can not see it. That's the power of denial. So when you use and think about, am I rationalizing? Like, why do I not train? Let's throw this in there because this I want to do in another podcast. But I'm going to throw it in right now. I believe that I believe that everybody, but I'm going to speak for my gender, myself, but I believe that men have a moral responsibility to learn how to protect. And if you do not, and by when I say that a responsibility, I mean that you have a responsibility to actively train. Not just again sit there and go, well, I was blessed with great genetics. I'm big, I'm tough, I'm strong, and I've been in a lot of hockey fights when I was 16 years old. I just fucked somebody up. You have a moral responsibility to train. I believe those that do not train in some way, shape, or form, I believe they're cowards. And I say that unapologetically because we can go to that, if you want to parallel it, go to Jordan Peterson. And he has his little speech on a good man and a dangerous man, and that every man should be a dangerous man. Because a good man is a weak man. Because a dangerous man has the option to be dangerous. And if they are good, that is by choice. Whereas a good man who does not have the capacity to defend, he has no choice but to be weak. He's good because he's fucking weak. He's good because he's a fucking coward. You get what I mean? Now, I'll separate this. I don't give a fuck if you ever threw a punch. But if you are willing to stand, right, and face evil, you may die instantaneously, but it takes courage to do that because there's going to be fear, right? So that is not, I would not consider that person a coward. So I'm talking about somebody who has no choice but to submit to the mercy of an enemy, has no choice but to sit there and allow innocent people, or potentially even slightly worse, depending on your perspective, he has to sit there and allow his family to be debased and dehumanized, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and he has no choice but to fucking eat that and pray that they stop or pray that they grant mercy. You know what I mean? Now, the caveat to that is I believe you should train, because if you have the courage to stand up, put yourself into harm's way, for fuck's sakes, train. Train so that we don't lose a really good person like you. What's that?
Give yourself a chance.
Give yourself a chance. You know how warriors are very rare. The people that actually are willing to stand up and face evil on whatever scale are fucking rare. Most are not willing to do this. And I'll be prolific with this because this is coming from life experience. I've been in a room with over 200 people in it. Let's just say that in that room, there's a lot of couples there. In that room, let's say there's 100 men. And there was 4 men that were absolutely fucking aggressively and violently terrorizing the women in that establishment. Physically, verbally, and they're doing it to like wives of these men. So you got 100 men in that room and 4 violent, predatory type criminals. And I'm the only one that stood up and faced that. That doesn't make me a hero. I'm the only one that stood up and faced it. I firmly believe that when I stood up and faced it, that was like, could be the end. I didn't stand up thinking, but I was trained. So, I didn't give a fuck because I was like, well, come what may. But this is the line in the sand. So this is a hill I'm willing to die on. But it stops fucking here. But nobody out of 100 men. Nobody. And matter of fact, when I did that, one other guy then joined in. But nobody else. 100 men could have stood up. 100 men could have stood up to 4. Those 4 would have shit their pants if they saw the lynch mob of men that are going, are you fucking insane? You think we're going to tolerate this in our society? But no, why? Because they're cowards. And I don't care what people think of that term or don't think of that term. Like, if you have something in your life that you love more than yourself, you have a moral obligation to learn how to protect that. I think that, having the courage to stand up to it, that's the biggest part. But you have a moral responsibility to train so that we as a society don't lose somebody like you, a good person, like, you know what I mean? So anyways, my thought process with this is that, like, I think that's an important thing. And I don't think we have enough. Like, look at, I heard this thing on the radio today. I'm ranting now. And I never heard this before. I don't know if you guys have. Toxic niceness, toxic happiness, toxic politeness. They are literally throwing the word toxic in front of fucking everything now. Toxic masculinity, I heard that one. I'd never heard of toxic happiness. They were literally talking about how if you sit there and someone says, like, what are your expectations for the day? And I was to say, I expect great things are going to happen to me. Like, I have that expectation. The world is good. So I don't know what'll come my way or not, but, I believe that good things are coming. People are literally going, that's toxic happiness.
Jesus.
And they're like saying you can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's toxic. To be that happy and it doesn't make any fucking sense, and to just walk around with this positive attitude like there's no proof of like all this type of shit. And it's like, so, as a man to sit here and say that, like, I believe men are cowards if you don't know how to protect. That's my belief. That's my opinion. Because what good are you then? Like, I can't imagine, I guess I'll look at it this way too. Until you have women, you have your wives, and you have your children, and they are absolutely capable of their own defensive strategies. They should be, they are just as capable, have every single right to do that. But at the same time, I also know that within my family, my wife, my daughters, especially being young, they look to me for protection. Just like my daughters, we've never we've never talked about this, they look to me to provide. If there's no food on the table at breakfast, lunch, or supper, they're probably going to look at me and go, what the fuck? And I'm not talking from a place of entitlement. I'm talking about a place of survival. So my wife equally is there to provide, but we do this together. There's a responsibility. So as much as they look to me to provide for them, shelter. Now, it doesn't matter. You don't have to live in, but they shelter from the fucking elements, food. They don't look to me for security. They don't look for me to create a safe place in this world for them to grow and have opportunity and prosper. I think they fucking do. So this is the stem of it. But you have a lot of people out there right now that are cowards. They cannot protect what they love. And I can't imagine living in this world with that feeling. I can't imagine walking around with that feeling of literally being like, don't worry about this. That's why we have police. We live in a great neighborhood. I'm such a great provider. I was able to afford for us to live in this beautiful neighborhood. There's no crime. Do you lock your door still? Well, yeah, but you get what I mean? Violence never happens here. All this type of shit, which is all just denial bullshit. But anyways, that's a whole different conversation. But I think there's a lot of men that are really torn about stepping into the role of being a protector. You know what I mean? And saying like, would probably never want to go anywhere and have a conversation about becoming a dangerous man and actually having the skills to protect. Yet they'll talk all day long about the degree to which they provide for their family. Well, that's a badge of honor. Wear a Rolex and show everybody this is the provider that I am. Drive a Ferrari, this is the provider that I am. Whatever it is, there's lots of ways that we can demonstrate that. But the willingness to protect, the willingness to study violence and master the tool of violence, so when we are legally and morally justified, we are a life-saving force, in a dark, critical moment, I think is powerful. So, I mean, that's my opinions. That's my rant. I don't know if that sparks anything in you guys that you want to talk about, but that to me is the denial. And it's like, you either a coward or a protector. I don't see a middle ground. I don't like, how are you, where are you at in the middle? You're either, and again, like I said, if you're willing to stand up and you got no skill, stand up. Good for you. That's how it starts. Get some training so that we don't lose you. I don't know. Any thoughts on that from you guys?
Just one comment, I think, because a lot of the denial, like we talked about, all the different 5 types, so much of it is society dependent, like meaning the society in which we live in. Because obviously if we went to another country, it could be very different. A different set of circumstances, you'd have very different responses and behaviors from people. So I think our society, being a generally peaceful society, is a blessing and a curse. I mean, yeah, that's great. That's great that the odds are in your favor. Awesome. I wouldn't want to live in a society any other way.
Yep.
But it's also such a curse because the thing is, violence is there. Criminals are out there. They do have bad intentions, and it does happen to people. But we have so much security in those odds that it's unfortunate. It's a total curse at the exact same time.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I couldn't agree more that we are definitely talking about this. I'm talking about this in my experience where I live culturally. It is easy for us to be cowards because we are blessed to live in a part of the world and a society that for the most part we can live. Like we use this example all the time. You can be born, live your entire life, prosper and succeed in every way possible, every way imaginable, change your life, change your career, go back, educate, all this stuff. You can do that up to live till you're 100 years old, die peacefully in your bed, and you never have to pay on the price of, you never have to pay for the freedoms and those rights that you were blessed with. Like you don't have to go off and fight a war. You don't have to be a warrior. You don't have to be the protector. You don't have to be. So you can live as a coward. And I know a lot of people, there's a stigmatism to you. Well, why the fuck are you calling me a coward? Because you don't know how to protect. You're not willing to protect. There's a price, like there's a price tag to that. And if you're a warrior, again, I'm not equating this to any level of training. But 100 men, when 4 people, and they weren't harassing my wife. They weren't accosting, like, the servers those weren't my daughters, but 100 men. And nobody says anything. They look the other way. They pretend they can't see it. I've seen this in restaurants. I've seen this in road rage. I've experienced this so many. Majority of time that I've used my skills, the weaponized skills, my understanding of violence, has been in defense of a complete fucking stranger. A handful of the times it has been in defense of my life or my family. The majority of the times, over a dozen times, it has been to the protection of a complete stranger. And every single fucking time, there has been always more than 50 other men there. Always more. In other vehicles, and in walking, standing, watching, recording, or just flat out fucking ignoring. And they'll rationalize, oh, well, I knew somebody I was calling 911. Oh, I would have jumped in there, but there was 3 other guys in front of me and they were closer. Like denial, rationalize, justify, minimize, make excuses, or just flat out, what happened? Oh man, if I'd have been there, if I'd have saw this, I didn't know what was going on. I thought they were just goofing around. I've heard it all. And at the end of the day, you're a coward. And that's okay. Like, you can change it. I was a total fucking coward before. I hated confrontation. I'd done martial arts my entire life, black belt stuff, and yet I didn't know how to train for violence. The last thing I would have fucking ever done is intervened in violence. Why? Because I was a fucking coward. Because I didn't know. That's all I'm saying. Is I didn't have the training. I didn't fucking understand this shit. The time that I got jumped, like, I did nothing. I was just blessed that I didn't have my family there. At that point, like, they could have been fucking murdered, and I would have lived with the regret of being like I was a total fucking coward. I was incapable of defending. But I changed that. And so, like, again, I was there. I'm not casting dispersions. I am saying I was there, but you need to make a decision. You need to make, what are you? You're a coward or you're a protector. So, that's a decision I think men need to make. And I don't think there's enough men that are doing it. I don't think there's enough men that understand that they can make it, or they don't have the guidance. And that's really what we're doing, is we're providing the guidance of how do I go. That's why it's weaponized 0 to formidable. How do I go from 0? I don't fucking know anything. I don't want to be a coward. I'm not looking to go out and be some fucking hero, but I don't want to be the fucking coward. I want to protect what I fucking love. That's the process.
It's interesting just sitting here, and it kind of hit me. I'm like, it's funny how I think a lot of men have it backwards, where they think it's easy to make the decision to want to protect, but it's hard to learn how to do it.
Yep.
And really the exact opposite. I mean, look at what we've been doing for the last year or more on this podcast. We're not directly teaching anybody how to protect. We're trying to convince people to make the decision to protect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's the hardest part. It's
100%.
like just getting people to get out of denial and to say, yeah, this is something I want for me, my family, or strangers, the good of society, whatever it is. Like, I want this. We need people to step up and say that. The rest is easy.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we can give you the rest so much simpler than getting you to say, yeah, I want it.
Yeah.
But I think people think it's the opposite. Oh, I would do it in a heartbeat, but it's way too hard, way too much this, too much that, don't have time, money, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, all that's so easy compared to making the decision.
Yeah, 100%. Again, a great fucking point, and that's 100% what we've been doing. And we had a talk before Christmas, or maybe it was over Christmas, anyways, but where we just had a thing where I was like, all the guys that train with us, I'll often ask people, how many men do you know that would love to do what we do, that are interested in coming and weaponizing and training with us? And, again, the longer people have been around, the more people are like, nah, I don't fucking know a single person. And then it hit me one day where I'm like, well, how many men do you know? Well, what do you mean? Like, how many men do you know? Well, I work here or I work there, and there's 300, 400 men there. Like, I don't know them all, but like, I can think of 50 people at work. All the men that are on my kids', hockey team, the other fathers, like this. So it's like, so is it fair to say that you know probably a couple hundred men? No, they're not all best friends, but you know a few hundred men. Yeah. Then you know a few hundred people that would love to come and train. So, well, no, I don't think, none of the people that I know, they wouldn't be interested. No, you're missing the point. If you know a man, and that man has a wife, or he has a family, or has parents, he has anybody in his life that he loves more than him fucking self, more than himself, then you have somebody that has the need for what we do. Now, if they're like, I don't want to do that for whatever fucking reason, then that's a denial. Like they're a coward. And that's okay. That's a choice they get to make. That's a totally fine thing to do. And some of them, they don't want to train. They're not cowards. They have that warrior mindset in them. They would protect. They just have zero skill set to do it. So they'd be very, very inefficient at it. It's not impossible. They could defend themselves. Great, good. But they're not giving them, they're assuming a tremendous amount of risk. But when you flip it and you start looking at this and you start going, what man, what father, what husband doesn't want to know, like, who doesn't want to make it easier to protect your family? Someone's trying to fucking fuck with your kids, your wife, and you're like, no, I don't want any help. I don't want to know anything about how I can defend them and stay alive myself. I don't want any of that. I don't care if there's going to be more of them. I don't care if they're going to have weapons. I don't care if they got blueprints and they're practiced at this and skilled at this and they're strategic at this. I don't care how ruthless they are. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't want to know about this stuff. So what else? You get what I mean? And the second you start flipping the script on that, you start getting a lot of these men that are like, they want to come out. Now, they're not all going to turn into lifestyle men, but they got to train. And the second they start doing it, they're like, in 16 hours, they're like, that was fucking amazing. They may never do it again, but they trained. They built, you know what I mean? They've become proficient. That's all you need. You don't need to be elite. You need to be proficient. But again, it's that whole thing. Well, are you a good man or a dangerous man? Because if you're a good man, you're weak. You are at the mercy because you have no fucking choice. You have no choice but to hope the police do their job well or that the police show up. You have no choice but to hope that the violent attacker doesn't murder, rape. Like, you just have no fucking choice that they don't hospitalize you. You have nothing. You're just literally hoping that the societal contract and you can just skirt through. You're a fish in the ocean and you never come across a shark. It's just like, whoo. And the part of the world we live in, many, 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 many people live a life just like that. You know what I mean? So I get it. But the contrast, I think, has to be stark because you got to interrupt people's pattern. And then, I'm not even getting it because I don't even, like, if you go out and take jiu-jitsu, good. If you go out and do Thai boxing, good. And you go out and you do it and say, well, 90% of it is just, I want to get out of the house and I sit at a fucking desk all day. I'm 40 years old. I want to get my fat ass in shape. Good. You're doing some training. Good. Go. Do something. Good for you. That's better than nothing. Right? So that's what you should do. And we have to have a word that differentiates us. Because if you don't do any of that, and you don't have that mindset to protect, then when that critical moment happens, you won't do what you think you're going to do. You won't rise to your expectations. You'll fall to your level of training. And if there's nothing there, most people will do nothing. Okay, so I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, right? And I just think it's like, for me, part of it is I feel like I need to be more prolific on this, and we have to have this because I look at my group of friends. I associate with people that are warriors and protectors. I don't have friends outside of this because I don't have anything in common with them. Because I don't want to sit around at a fucking house party talking about Kentucky fucking bluegrass and how's your grass coming in and how's your golf game? I don't give a fuck. It's mind-numbing to me. Like, it's such shallow small talk shit. And if you like golf, then that's great. That's your thing. But it's like, I like being around people that have the same mindset as me. And we don't sit around all the time fucking talking about, fighting and violence and warrior shit. But there is a core belief values of how we live our life that resonate and permeate every one of our conversations. And that allows us to go deep. And I think there's a lot of men that don't have that, but they want that. They want to have a connectedness to their primal warriorship. It's inside of us. And whether they ever use it or not, and you pray that you never have to, they're longing for that release, that connection. And again, why? Because you're either a coward or you're a protector. It's, you know, because again, a provider's a provider and a protector's a protector. You got to be able to protect what you're providing. It's always, we talked about that when it comes to survival stuff. I don't care what you do for survival, it's always going to fall to security. You can have, the world goes to shit and you got a house full of food and you got powers, all this shit. And then the neighbors go, look at that motherfucker. Let's go take his shit. And they just, you got to be able to defend it. Provide and protect, they're hand in hand, right? We just, like you said, Dustin, we live in a part of the world where, you know what I mean? That connection isn't clearly seen. It's not clearly visible. So I don't know. Anyways, that's my rant. We definitely got away from the whole, well, no, we didn't. It's still connected to it. But I guess maybe if I bring it back a little bit and try to connect things a little bit, tighten this up a little bit, it's problems, not solutions. You got to own the fucking problem. To own the problem, I think you have to have had experiences that allow you to feel as though you've lived it. You are intimately connected to the threats that exist in this world, the necessity for security, the necessity for why you need to train a little bit, train a lot, whatever you got to do. But you've got to do it. It's like, you know, if you want to survive, you got to understand how to get food. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whether you hunt that or whether you go to the grocery store and buy it. That means there's two different extremes of how people feed themselves. You grow it, you know, there's a whole sliding scale in between that. But you got to be able to protect. You don't want to be the fucking coward, right? And on this journey of weaponizing, one of our sayings, right? The cowards never fucking start. They will not start the journey. They're scared to look at criminality. They're scared to study violence. They're scared to see, the outliers and the dark spots, the evil that exists in this world. So the cowards never fucking start the journey. The cowards will never, ever listen to a podcast like this. They will rationalize, justify, make excuses, minimize, and flat out refuse. They'll do everything. They'll trash what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, my beliefs. They'll do anything to fucking deny and never fucking start the journey because they're cowards. Then the weak, they'll start it. They'll look at it, but they'll fucking die along the way. They will, you know what I mean? Like, I have to educate and hand walk people through this. And I say, listen, sit down and watch these 6 videos, 15 minutes of video. Watch 6 of them. And you'll get, if you got 100 people start those 6 videos, 15 minutes of video, by the time you get to the second video, you're going to have 80% of the people stop. They're going to die along the fucking way. They can't make 30 fucking minutes. Even if you spread it over, they can't do it. And then you get, 5% of, or you get, maybe another, the 20% will move on and get to the 3rd or 4th video. By the time you get to 6 videos, you got about 1%. Half to 1% will make it 6 videos, can invest that amount of time. That's an hour and a half. That's 90 minutes. I was thinking today about like how sad it is that our world, the average person in our world has a 7-second attention span. They can't focus longer than 7 seconds. What else came up today? There's something else Christy and I were talking about today. And it's like, oh yeah, when you write something, like when I write an educational piece, when I put something out there, the industry standard for any type of marketing to try to reach people that are unfamiliar with your product or your brand or your whatever you're doing, you have to write or speak at a 3rd grade level or lower to get them to understand it. If I told somebody that, listen, the first step, I'll do it for you for free. I will knock down the 4 things that'll get you killed the quickest. Okay, which I do for people. And I said, the number 1 place I want you to start is I want you to watch this workshop. It's 90 minutes. They won't do it. People cannot do it because it's not a 3rd grade level. You have to break it down and say, listen, the first step is to watch this 15-minute video. And out of that, you're going to get very few people. Like, how weak is our world? Like, and this is like, we exclusively train men over the age of 30, between 30 to 60 years old. We specialize in that. Who probably haven't done shit since they were fucking young, and they say, I work all fucking day at an office. I want to do something. I've worked hard. I got a job, got a career, got married. I'm in a spot where finally I've got some money, some success, some time, everything's been about everybody else, and now it's like I want to fucking do something with my life. But now they're sitting there going, well, I'm probably too old, too fat, too weak. I'll fucking get hurt. Some shit will happen to me. I can't do this shit. And it's like they can't even watch, 2 or 3 or 6 15-minute videos. And yet we want them in the most critical moment when their kids, their wife, themselves are being threatened by violent, they expect to, I don't know. So, and anyways, I'm on a rant with it, but to me, it's just, this is the shit. This is the conversations. I'm just trying to be real with people. This is the battle that we're having. I think there's a lot of really good men that want to connect, that want to fucking weaponize, that don't want to be the fucking cowards. This is your story. You want to be the coward, or you want to be the protector, right? You can live in denial and you can hope that it never happens and you never have to figure out which you were. But that was, I was the coward. I was lucky enough to survive. And I was like, I never want to fucking live like that. I don't want to fucking feel like that. That's where my passion for helping men become weaponized, that's where it comes from, is because I've fucking been there. So, any dispersions that I'm casting are at a past version of myself and a desire to never want to be that coward and that weak guy again. It's fucking horrific. It's a horrific feeling. I can't imagine if I would have had a family member murdered because of my, cowardice. It's fucking mind-boggling to think about. But anyways, I don't know. Any final thoughts, guys, as we wrap up this rant to start off season 2?
Yeah, I know for me, it's just listening to the rant. I think that there's maybe 2 types of listeners that are going to hear tonight's podcast. One is going to be the intellectual listener who, again, can very well understand everything that we're saying, and that's fine. Then there's going to be the emotional listener. And I know for me, being on this side of the rant, there's a lot of things that were said tonight that hit me on an emotional level and had me kind of reflecting on kind of some of my own shit. And it's like, if you watch this and it didn't hit you emotionally, maybe watch it again. And because then you're kind of coming from it of just an intellectual understanding. I think there's more to what we talked about tonight than just a simple understanding of what the subject matter happens to be. Yeah. So I would encourage people to review it if you have it in you to, as we said at the end, it's like, people aren't going to do it, but fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Do it twice.
Yeah, do it twice, yeah. Saturate with it. Yeah. Dustin, any final thoughts?
Not really. The only thing that hit me, you kind of even said it a little bit in your wrap up. You said it earlier tonight, but just the words "never again." I think just highlighting how powerful those words are. And again, like you said earlier, it's not, maybe you didn't experience like a full on violent encounter, but violence in one way, shape, or form at some level has touched you in your life, like just people. And so I think it's kind of like, take that time and effort, and like Brad said, get emotional with it. Go back into that moment and think about how that made you feel, and chances are you never want to feel that again. And so it's like, so use those words, that never again, like, because that becomes that motivational fuel to be like, yeah, I do want to stand up and I do want to start this journey to whatever extent and depth that is, but just doing something. You know what I mean? Like we said earlier, like, just give yourself a chance. If you're gonna stand up for yourself, your family, other people, give yourself a chance. Give yourself some skill sets.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with it all. One of my things for this year, for this season, and just in everything, is to really try and allow, is to be more uncensored. And I know that, like, what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, I'm not always going to articulate exactly how I feel about it, so it can be misinterpreted a little bit. I might not articulate it, as accurately as I would like to, but over the past year and the past number of years, again, doing this for 30 years, I constantly am contacted or meet people that have been hit by violence, destroyed by violence. It's fucking horrific. I've lost friends to violence, gone to funerals for people, and I just believe that, we need to be a little bit louder in the sense that I believe, men deserve, and again, because I've specifically trained men need to learn this. Men need to weaponize. They need to stop being fucking cowards. They need to take a fucking stand. They need to recognize what's important to them, and they need to get some training. And so that's my mission on this in my life is to encourage people to do this. Everything I have in my life has come through training. I live my beliefs every single day. I'm blessed with it. I have everything I have has come through training. I hear guys every day and they're preaching the value and the benefits of jiu-jitsu, the benefits of Thai, but all great. Weaponizing is the greatest fucking shit on the planet. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'll throw our hat in the ring any day of the week because, as men, as providers, you work, you're fucking busy, you got family, you got kids. What are you doing with your time? Fucking learn something. Like ground is part of what we do. Like you're doing it, like learn something that has these added benefits of being able to actually fucking protect your family in the worst fucking nightmare shit. And everything else in your life gets better with this. So, that's probably what, motivated the rant tonight more than anything is, again, just seeing, good men struggling and not knowing what to do to really connect with that warrior that's inside of them, become that protector, be the man you're meant to fucking be, and the protector your family needs you to be. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great season, guys. Got lots of really good stuff, good topics. We're going to go deep with stuff. We're definitely got a lot more controversial things that we're going to talk about and stuff, but it's time. Men need to wake the fuck up and know that they have options and choices of how they want to live in this world. So, anyways, that's it. All right, everybody, till next time, stay safe, stay weaponized, and we'll chat again soon.